Welcome back to Trapping Legally, powered by the Real ENT Podcast. I'm your host, Rose Farrell, and it is a pleasure to do this again for another week. We are at episode 5. Can you believe it? I really can't. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, consistency is one of the things that we really want to get and make a point on this podcast. For this year, consistency is the ulterior goal. It really is. We just want to stay consistent on everything that we choose and believe in. And what we believe in is this podcast. What we believe in is the brand. And the brand that we're sponsoring is Real ENT LLC. Is the umbrella to multiple assets that provide a service to the community. And I'm so happy to be able to sit here and present one of the things that I feel the most fond of, in my opinion. And I believe that Trapping Legally is going to be one of the most superlative things that I have to show for when it's all said and done. Now, today on Trapping Legally, I want to really talk about the pandemic. I really want to talk about the pandemic for this entire episode. I think that this segment is something that people have forgotten about, considering it's 2026, when 2020 was probably the craziest year of our lives. If you wasn't alive for it, that's okay. But people who went through COVID, in my opinion, have been through so much. They have seen so much, and I just feel like it really goes unnoticed, if I may say, because 2020 changed everything. Literally and figuratively. 2020 is the reason why a lot of people work remote. 2020 is the reason why AI has taken over the world. 2020 is the reason why mental health is at its all-time high. 2020 is the reason why the world has gone virtual. And I really want to take a day to record a segment on Trapping Legally and really talk about the seams of the 2020 global pandemic of COVID-19. So I'm just going to start off with just a basic intro. And COVID-19, I remember the first day when I was at work. I was working for Vinfin Corporation at the time. And I remember one day, it was Saturday morning at, I believe, 10:30 a.m., where one of my coworkers, who was crazy, by the way, he was actually crazy, like psycho. He turned on the TV and he said, "Yo, look at this." And at the time, I'm just like, what? And me, I'm not a guy who watches the news. You know what I mean? I'm not someone who is really intrigued. I'm not aware. I don't like the news. Why? Because I don't believe in negativity. I don't believe in people waking up every day to globally just stream all the bad things that's going on in the world. Now, I understand that the news is something where people need to be aware of what's going on, and people need to know that there's people shooting, there's people raping, there's people molesting, there's people robbing. There's so much things going on in this world that is very malicious, cold, and utterly disturbing, if I may say. But I'm not someone who really likes to tune in. I'm Haitian American, to be quite frank. And my ancestors, mom, dad, uncle, grandma, things of that nature, they pride on watching the news. And when I first heard about COVID-19, I thought it was bullshit. I really thought it was bullshit. But it ended up being the craziest thing that has ever occurred in mankind, in my opinion, outside of New York in 2003. September 11th. Was it September 11th, 2003? Or was it 2001? I really do forget, honestly. I forgot. When was that? Can someone drop in the comments when that was? Let's see who knows their history. I would love for people to drop in the comments. You know? Maybe I'm bugging. I don't know. But anyways, that's not the point. If you know what happened with 9/11, please let us know when 9/11 occurred. Was it 2001, 2003, 2002? I forget. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just a man. I heard about COVID-19 And I generally thought it was BS. Until the streets started getting blocked out. Until I was told that I'm considered an essential worker and I have an obligation to go to work consistently. And if I get mandated to stay, then you get mandated to stay. I thought it was bullshit until they started forcing staff to wash their hands every hour. I thought it was bullshit until they started forcing staff to wear masks literally all day. You was not supposed to have your mask off if you were not on break, if you were not outside of the perimeter, if you was anywhere near work, a client, patient, staff member, anything, your mask needs to be on. I thought it was bullshit when they said social distancing. You need to be 6 feet away from each other. There is no reason why you should be within 6 feet from someone. And honestly, there were so many other things. They started saying we need to get vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you can't work. You need to be vaccinated so you could be healthy. But it's just more like, what are y'all putting in this vaccine? What is in the vaccine that's so essential for me to work in this community? Now, I generally feel like, in my opinion, even before all the crazy things occurred in the global pandemic, I thought it was just the government trying to scam us, trying to get them to do what they want us to do so they can get a bigger return of investment. Mind you, in 2020, the restaurants got shut down. The clubs got shut down. The streets got shut down if you were not an essential worker. People lost their jobs. Unemployment was at an all-time high. Everybody got laid off. And if you were not an essential worker, you was in the crib, unemployed, no work, no income, nothing. Motherfucker said, sit the fuck down and come collect this check. So you know what that did? It made people so lazy. It genuinely consumed the entire work population and brought it to a standard. Now, it's already hard enough to get a job in this economy. But now, in today's day, it's so hard for someone to keep a job. Nobody wants to work anymore because the world has adapted after 2020 to let everyone understand that you genuinely do not have to work a 9-to-5 to be successful or to make a stable living. Because of 2020, entrepreneurship became more of a necessity. Because of 2020, entrepreneurship came alive, full force. Everybody got laid off. What am I supposed to do? People got kids, people was engaged, married, people got bills to pay. What am I supposed to do? So people's backs were against the wall and they was forced to figure it out. Now, with everyone being forced to figure it out, a lot of people became entitled. Now, I'm going to tell you something about being entitled. Entitlement can make you or break you. You can feel entitled to whatever it is that you please. That don't mean it's right, though. And because of 2020, entrepreneurship came alive. And as entrepreneurships were coming alive, a lot of people's ego and a lot more arrogance was in the air because people figured it out. Because people's backs were against the wall. Now nobody knows how to talk to people. Now everybody wants to be the boss, but nobody wants to do the actual work. Now we have too many pioneers and we ain't got no pigeons. Everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to lead. Everybody wants to wear the hat. But nobody just wants to be the role man. Nobody just wants to be the player that's being a part of something that's real. Nobody wants to do that. COVID put a lot of batteries in people's backs that allowed them to understand what they really can do. But what about the regular man? What about the other guy? What about the guy that doesn't believe himself, that doesn't think he can get out and actually go perform and show people something and show people what they're made of? What about them? What happened to them? What do they qualify for? I'll tell you this much. If they already don't believe in themselves, what do you think was going to happen? You're telling me the government didn't know what they was doing? I can put my money that if the government knew that entrepreneurs were going to be evolving after this pandemic, this global pandemic, would they have done the same thing over and over and over again? Would they have made the same mistakes? Would it have been the same? Because 2020 was a make or break type of year. Some people say 2020 was the best year of my life. Some people say 2020 was awful and I hated every bone in my body of it. But that's when we need to stop worrying about what the next man got going on and start worrying about what you got going on. Because worrying about what he got going on ain't you. What do you get from just calling him just to see what he's doing? What do you get from that? And I'm not someone who's trying to be transactional or whatever the case is, but let's just keep it tall. All right, what are we doing? 2020, everybody was in Miami. The flights was $50 round trip. Pay a couple of taxes, you good. Meanwhile, while those people were in Miami, he's over there playing the back seat, getting busy for that opportunity to strike. So he's ready for the fight. I met a millionaire today. And the reason why I was even speaking to this millionaire was because I spoke to someone else and they invited me to some private runs down in Randolph. And I was at the gym in the sauna, a bunch of men in the sauna. And the man that invited me to the private runs left. But the man sitting down in the sauna said, "What's your podcast about?" I said, "It's called Trap Illegally, powered by the Real NT Podcast. Our mission statement is to help lower and middle class citizens prepare to get themselves out the rat race in every way, shape, or form." He said, "What's the name of the podcast? Where do you have it on?" I said, "Social media like YouTube, Instagram, things like that." He said, "Nice. Let me subscribe." But the one thing that I took away from this man, who I'd never met before, mind you, everyone knows that the real estate is probably the most liquidated asset in the business to be able to just be free. But outside of just having real estate, let's understand why it takes so long. Let's talk about that. It takes so long because despite you constantly trying to figure it out and find out what it is that you really want to do for yourself, how are you going to learn if you continue to stay stuck? You're still in the rat race and you're still stuck because you work for someone. You have responsibilities that require you to have a 9-to-5 job that's taking up all of your time. Come on now. What are we doing? I don't understand. Because if you stopped doing what you've always been doing, then you'll stop trying to figure it out and you'll just do it. But instead, you continue to do the normal things that you constantly do over and over again, and you wonder why you're still in the same position that you were. The scariest thing is being in the same spot a year from now. Imagine today you are still doing the same thing you've been doing since September with no room of growth or information. That's real spill. Now, eventually for this brand, Real ENT LLC is going to have an e-commerce store full of platforms, uniforms, and all the extracurriculars. Being able to have digital products to sell on any virtual platform, any social platform is what the world is coming to today. But now let's go over some good and bad. Let's go over the pros and the cons of what this pandemic has really done. So me personally, if I get a phone call and someone says, I got some good news and I got some bad news, I'm going to talk about the bad news first. I want to hear them. Just tell me what the fuck. Just say what you got to say. In my opinion of COVID, motherfuckers done gained weight. Motherfuckers done got into bad habits. When I say bad habits, a bad habit is only bad when you have no control over the situation anymore. A bad habit is when this thing that you do now consumes your everyday. You know what I mean? It consumes your everyday case of living. You need it in the morning, you need it in the afternoon, you need it in the evening, the nighttime, whatever the case is. That's what I mean by bad habits. Because if it was a good habit, it would be putting you in a place where you're more productive in your day-to-day. But instead, this bad habit is something that is negating your progress in whatever way, shape, or form. I know people who went through COVID and they was the fattest they've ever came out of that in that time frame because motherfuckers just are not moving anymore. Niggas is in the crib eating. We getting paid every week. Everything got shut down. All you gotta do is pay your bills. We eating probably breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You feel me? Like a lot of people done gained weight that some people are still probably even trying to work off. If I'm being quite frank, let's just keep it tall. You know what I mean? Being stuck inside was just something that a lot of people who are so just pro on the go were just not used to that. It's almost like everybody was on house arrest. There was no reason for you to be stepping out. And if you were, people were looking at you like you're crazy, you're dangerous, and I should not be around you because we don't know what you got. At that time, people was literally flying to Miami and having the time of their lives. Flights to Miami was 50 bones. I'm telling you, it was not a joke. COVID-19 was life-changing. People was doing things what they wasn't doing at all in their daily living. And it was up to your discretion on how you wanted to live your life. A lot of people played it safe. I'm not going to risk it. I don't want to risk my family getting sick. I don't want myself to get sick. Some people said, fuck it. We out. I don't give a fuck. And it was what that was. But it like when I weigh these pros and cons, it really just depends on who you were, what you had going on, the people you lived with, and the life that you was living prior before COVID, on your outlook on COVID-19. You know what I mean? For me, I was an essential worker. You know what I mean? So it's just more like I still had a job. I was still getting up and just going to work. But the thing about me was they was mandating me to stay. They didn't want me to leave. So I had to sleep at the job. I couldn't go. It was just a bunch of nonsense. And here I am just pressing everybody to make sure they pay me my hazard pay. Because this is dangerous. You know what I'm saying? So for me, being stuck in the house, I was stuck in the house, but I wasn't stuck in the house. Because I was just going from crib to crib. But that's all I was doing. Just going from crib to crib. Everybody else is just indoors, on the phone, laptop, with family. Now imagine if you was just with family that you just didn't like. Imagine if you was around people that you had beef with in your house. Some people don't like their family in their household. Some people don't like the people that they live with. Now you got to deal with things that you used to ignore, but now it's just, you have no choice but to confront it. So from my perspective, me not working was never a thing. I always had a job. Me getting out of my own routine, me personally, I was always in a routine. I was never out of it. I was stuck indoors, but I was indoors making money. I had my push-up board at that time, so I was still working out. I was one of the guys that went out to the fields and I was just working out, doing football drills, ladder drills, working on the sand, the beach, and things like that because we ain't have no gym. Just go put a mask on. That's when I was one of those guys where, although this is happening, I'm going to find a way because I don't want life to stop me from doing whatever it was that I was doing. That's just how I looked at COVID-19. What? You're not going to tell me that I got to stay in the house? All right. If I stay in the house, then what do I get for that? Oh, we just going to give you this unemployment check. Man, in my opinion, I should have taken COVID-19 a lot more serious than what it is. Because I done known so many people who came up in 2020. And I also done known a lot of people who struggled. And here I am, I'm just in the middle of both. I done seen both stories. Although there were a lot of bad things in 2020 with COVID-19, especially with education and people just not being allowed to have real, genuine social cues. People struggled with that. They like after COVID-19, there was a lack of just social responsibility. Nobody knew how to talk to people no more. It's crazy. Any COVID baby, they was born during a literal life change. And they're going to grow up to hear about this life change and they're going to understand how severe it was. But COVID-19 put everyone's perspective literally on the chopping block. And they just started taking it out one by one by one. 2020 is the reason why AI became alive. It's the reason why we now are battling and self-equipping ourselves to beat a robot. Year by year by year, technology arises and gets better by the year. By the end of this decade, in 2026, what else do you think they're going to create? It was the start of the generation of cutting out the middleman. The middleman is the lower class citizen needing a job. They is the government. The government is creating a system where they are now not only still having slavery be a thing, but they are monetizing slavery in a multitude of ways. Like legit. There are certain slaves that are getting replaced by robots. When was the last time you went and ate fast food? If you go to a fast food restaurant tonight, tomorrow, next week, you will see if the town actually cares about the community and things like that, and they make those certain changes, you're going to see a non-human being at the drive-thru taking your order. It is now a machine. Back when you go and do groceries and things and whatnot, you would always go down to self-checkout and just scan your own items, right? There are certain grocery stores where they only have just a couple cashiers working that day. And all the other lines are closed. And self-checkout is busting. There are certain restaurants. I was in Thailand, actually. And even in Thailand, I was at McDonald's. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. And we're making an order. They have an entire big screen where you make the order. You don't even have to talk to anybody anymore. AI is taking over the world with our very eyes. Year by year by year by year. And it's getting really ugly. And people, in my opinion, don't talk about it enough. Instead of people talking about it, people are praising it and using it to their advantage. But what about the people who still don't know? If you're watching this and you're just now figuring out that computers is the future, you're in trouble. Which is why I created this podcast to discuss important figures for us to understand and for us to really get our hands on. So the rat race is no longer a thing. If you do not make over $80,000 a year, you are most likely struggling in this economy as a single man or woman. Also, depending on where you live. But sometimes that don't even matter at this point anymore. Everywhere's expensive. Literally. In 2020, people didn't have money, so you know what they was doing? They were scamming. Y'all ever heard about the PPP loan? I know some of y'all know about that PPP. That PPP loan, motherfuckers was getting $50,000 off. $50,000 getting paid. Some of those guys are in jail right now. Excuse me. A lot of those guys is in jail right now. But this just goes to show 2020, everybody was going through something different. A lot of people saved a lot of money during that time. A lot of people who were financially stable prior to the incident of 2020, they were just saving a shit ton of money, playing it safe. But in my opinion, the certain percentage of people playing it safe versus certain people just going out and doing all the wrong things outweigh a lot more. People were dying in so many different ways, whether it was natural causes, sickness. For anyone who lost someone in 2020, I just wanted to have a moment of silence. For everyone that did not want the social economic of change to occur in 2020, I feel bad for you because I didn't want it to change either. But here we are because this is what the world is now. The world we live in now in this economy is expensive in this economy. It's generated by computers. The world we live in now in this economy is out of this world in so many different ways. Nowadays, you got people graduating school. They just did a hard 4 years and they have a 50-50 shot, if that, on landing a career. Now, that 50, that doesn't tell you whether or not you're going to get a job or not because you have no experience. They didn't tell you that in high school or in college that you should be getting internships while you're in college. In that way, when you get out, you have some level of experience that they can look at, which is why a lot of guys who get out of school, they don't find jobs right off the bat because they still need to work and gain that experience for someone to want to hire them. It's an unfortunate thing. There was so much impact. And for those who survived and lived and saw this, you are a resilient motherfucker. Because we done watched the world change in so many ways. A good job doesn't matter anymore. You have to have a side hustle. You think you made it, but you still got to keep working. You can't move out your parents' crib because it's like, why would you do that and just go pay someone and struggle? Even if you have a roommate, you still could possibly be struggling because the price you're paying with the roommate is the price. Oh man. Sometimes I don't even want to talk about it. It's really crazy out here. Now, certain people allow COVID to be the best thing that ever happened to them. But that only was because they was prepared. And the thing about being prepared is understanding what's next and looking ahead. Understanding where we are, what we're here for, what are we doing. And a lot of motherfuckers don't do that. They don't do that because they're not thinking ahead. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about next week. They're just so worried about right now. Right now is always going to be here. But people who allow 2020 to be the best thing that ever happened to them were motherfuckers who had that mindset and was hungry, just waiting for an opportunity for them to strike. And now there's a lot of millionaires who came from COVID. My old boss even bought a crib during COVID. COVID done changed so many people's lives because it was a millennial type of year. Some people bought their first house. Some people bought their first investment. Some people finally went to the gym and started choosing a new career. Some people really bossed up and became a businessman, an entrepreneurship owner. Other people struggled. Other people bullshitted. Other people paid for the price that they committed. It's just, what would you have done if you knew everything you know now about COVID-19? And how would you maneuver it if you was to go through a situation like that again? Would you have still done the same thing that you did prior 6 years ago? Or would you have moved differently? COVID-19 is something I can never forget because it has drastically shifted the community in ways that I don't think it's ever going to go back to what it used to be because there's no reason to. And if you're listening to this is a message to let you know that you need to get on your shit and stay on your shit so you don't get left behind, literally. So you don't get left behind, so you don't get replaced, and so you don't get overlooked because things are changing and ain't nobody waiting for you. The show must go on. The sun is going to rise up every day, whether you like it or not. And an unemployment check is not going to save you. It's not. So during that time, that was probably the last time you'll see gas that cheap ever again. So folks, I hope this video treated you well. There's plenty of more content to discuss about. We just get into the cracks. We just getting started. This is episode 5 of the Real ENT Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trapping Legally. I'm your host, Rose for Real. I hope you enjoyed. Stay locked in, stay tuned, and make sure you focus up. Because again, ain't nobody saving you. Ain't nobody here waiting on you. You gotta make sure you're good. Because the way this world is going, they don't give a fuck. They don't give a flying fuck. Take care of yours. Stay the course. Stay locked in. This is Trapping Legally. Subscribe. Catch us out on Instagram, TikTok. We're here. Episode 6 coming soon. Safety.